Welcome to A Second Helping with Allison Bartow, a wedding photography podcast with a focus on second shooting. On this week's episode, the bride's sister surprises everybody with an unwanted mummers performance. The limo bus has to circle back around to get the bride's parents from the hotel. And lastly, the bride's gown catches on fire during the best man speech.
Good morning. It is 9:30. I'm on 76. It is a beautiful day. Dare I say glorious. It is 55 degrees. It's like the most beautiful fall day. Not hot, not cold, sunny. Last time I checked, there wasn't any rain in the forecast. So I'm on my way down to the city. I am going to try and park beneath the Crystal Ballroom, Crystal Tea Room. I feel like I'm combining that. I'm going to park beneath the Crystal Tea Room, drop off my flashes, and then, if I can, and then head over to the Lowe's to meet Dave. If I can't leave my flashes, I can still carry them. I brought like my lighter over-the-shoulder flash bag. So I can only fit 3 light stands in there. So that's what I'm working with. I'm going to head over to Lowe's to meet Dave. Bride and groom prep is happening there. And I think Dave and I have done prep at the Lowe's together before. But honestly, those hotels down in the city sometimes blur for me. However, I know we definitely didn't do first looks or portraits on the 33rd floor of the Lowe's. So that will be a first for me, not for Dave. I'm really looking forward to it. I immediately thought of Cliff Mountner's bridal portrait that he did up there that was gorgeous. So that'll be nice to do that. And then she has on her list like steps on the portraits on the steps. Then we're going to head over to Merchants Exchange, City Hall, Broad Street if there's time, but definitely a night shot out on Broad Street. Then we head over to Crystal Tea Room where the ceremony and the reception is happening. So that's kind of nice to just get up. It's kind of nice to just get set up and be ready to go then for the rest of the night. And we've worked there together before. We know what we're getting into. We know what to expect. Everything sounds pretty good. There's nothing I'm nervous about. Logistically, we seem good. Weather-wise, we seem good. Venue-wise, we're familiar with it. The bride and groom are in their late 40s, early 50s, so I'm excited to shoot a couple that's a little bit older than what I've been shooting a lot of recently. The groom has an 11-year-old son who their son sounds really great and, was really good with photographs and, wasn't like having a preteen moment. He just sounds like a really great kid, so that will be nice. Really looking forward to it. I have a few notes from Dave, so I adjusted my settings because apparently I had my JPEG RAW and JPEG with the JPEG on like fine. And so it was like huge JPEG files. So I adjusted that last night. Memory cards are formatted. Time is synced. I am going to make sure when I'm shooting details or certain things, maybe with like writing in them, to have a higher aperture because I've shot on a wide open aperture and then like the details fall off. So especially like if there's writing and it's like at an angle. So I want to be aware of that. And then I want to try to get like speeches. Dave said really he wants to try to get more reaction shots from his second shooters. So I'm really going to make an effort to do that. That's like a psychological thing. Like when the action is one place and everyone's looking there, it's like I just instinctively feel like that's what so I have to like kind of reprogram myself. I've been doing a little bit better, but I know I can do a lot better with trying to get the reactions. So I also want to like nail down. So I just want to make sure I know exactly where our parents and grandparents are seated so that I can get their reaction shots for speeches, first dances. I'm going to check in with Dave too. The ceremony is supposed to only be 10 to 15 minutes. So for a longer ceremony, I think it's easier to make sure as a second that you're getting a lot of reactions and audience. Do you call it an audience? Guest photos. When it's only 10 to 15 minutes, I feel like you also want to make sure you're getting some of the primary action just like as, like additional backup. So there's more photos of that to supplement what the lead is shooting, because if it's a really short ceremony, just to make sure you've got that coverage. And it's going to be darker in there, so we're going to have to talk about our whole flash setup and what he wants from me as it relates to that. So yeah, I feel like there's one other note. I just did the image sizes, being aware of like the aperture for certain things, actions, reactions. The groom has a hearing device that comes out very easily. So Dave said I should remind him for some of the portraits to have the groom just take that out. So that's on my list. And then Dave's bringing the family shot list. It sounds like they've got a fair amount, but they also want to get through it quickly. So it may not be a ton, but they still want to move through it quickly. So I just want to make sure I am assisting with that. I've read through my timeline a few times. Everything looks good. So I'll check that out again when I get down there. I didn't have any other questions. So I'm looking forward to a really great day and a great wedding. Today's wedding was fantastic. We really lucked out with great weather, good timeline, good traffic. The bride's dress was only on fire for a little bit. I mean, it was smooth sailing. So I was able to get into the crystal tea room early like I did last time, which made me really happy. Dave ended up meeting me there to drop off his stuff. The room was mostly set. The team was there doing their pipe and drape, which there wasn't a lot for the room. Got to the hotel a little bit early, met up with the videographer, and then went up to the ladies. The bride she was in a good mood. I think she's probably like a little intense and just wanted things to go a certain way. She had a certain timeline. Her makeup hadn't been done yet, and the makeup artist was like, oh, I only need like a little bit of time. It was like 10 or 15 minutes. Spoiler alert, it was an hour. And then we were doing some detail shots, and the maid of honor, who is the bride's sister, pulled me aside to let me know that nobody knew, not the bride, not the bridesmaids, but she had arranged for the mummers to come perform at the reception at 8:45. But no one knew, and we couldn't tell anyone. So I made sure Dave knew, and the videographer. It's a kind of an imposition to make that assumption that somebody wants the mummers performing, because I mean, you perform for like, it feels like 3 hours, but it's probably like 20 minutes. So I wasn't with the ladies for too long. The flowers were really pretty, except they did have the like dyed turquoise orchids, but they had beautiful anemones, really gorgeous deep purple roses. Jeff, the videographer, and I went up to the guys. They were they had suits with vests. They were like almost all dressed. The rooms were fantastic because it was just like walls of windows. So we had tons of natural light, which was great because last week the hotel did not. And so there was just like some really dark spots and shadows. So this was nice. It wasn't a huge room, but the guys were just kind of like hanging out, standing still, talking. So I was able to maneuver. The groom's son is 11, and his big priority was to make sure he had shots getting ready with his son. So I think I have a lot of those. I knew that the groom had like hearing aids. He really could not hear. Like he would take it off for some pictures at his request, and he really couldn't hear. So I tried to like make sure I was looking at him when I was speaking to him, I was assuming that he reads lips to a certain extent. Clearly, I'm great at enunciating, which is perfect for reading lips. He and I went up to the 33rd floor for the first look, and of course the bride was running late because hair and makeup does not take 10 to 15 minutes. Actually, that was just makeup. Her hair was already done. Just makeup still took like an hour. I think the first look turned out nicely. I can't wait to see Dave's pictures. We've got like the skyline in the background, and it was he got them up. He offered for them to get up on like the wall area there. It's like 3 feet up. So the bride was all for it. So those look really good. We were a little bit behind because of that. And then we got downstairs, and the groomsmen were supposed to be downstairs at the bar having a few drinks, and they weren't down there yet. So we made our way over to the stairs and told those guys to catch up with us. And I've been in the Lowe's Hotel, but I'd never been over to those stairs before. So that was nice to kind of put 2 and 2 together, because I'd seen those pictures and I'd been to the hotel, but I had no clue where that was. Those looked great. I think the lighting was good for that. And then we did some wedding party pictures there. And we get in the shuttle. We're like, I don't know if we're 8 or 10 minutes maybe behind schedule, but we have like, I mean, the city timelines are like 15 minutes here, 8 minutes to drive here, 15 minutes here, over to here. And there's just not a lot of, you're not going to make up any time driving in the city. So we pull away, and I can hear them in the back of the bus talking like, well, where were they? Didn't they know? Blah, blah, blah. Well, it turns out the bride's parents didn't come down to get in the limo bus with everybody. And the sister calls, the sister who ordered the mummers, then called her parents and was talking with them. And the decision was made to go back and pick them up. So I don't know. That's my new hobby, putting timestamps next to the timeline to see how long things actually took, and when I think things took longer than they really did. But I mean, to circle back around, and then the sister had to get out and run across the street and get them and bring them over, and then the dad was cranky, and apparently he was a little bit cranky to begin with. Like, he was telling Dave his suit was back at his house, and I don't know. So he was just like not loving the wedding day, which always just annoys me. So it's like, it's not for you. So we made it over to Merchants Exchange, and like, of course, the parents were like in the background. Dave said he couldn't see them, but it was like, I don't know, like there's one building that the wedding party is standing in front of. Why you would stand behind them, between them and the building. But Dave was fine, so we didn't really have to tell them to move. Got portraits done pretty quickly, like the individual wedding party portraits, and then made it over to Broad Street for those pictures. And we were taking those, and we had told the bridal party, like, to stay on the bus. We're going to just get these pictures. So we're taking the pictures, and I think, I feel like we had like 2, we were doing like one setup, and then we were doing the dip, and then we were doing like the walking shot. And so we were trying to do the dip, and all of us, and you've got like in the daytime, then you've got like people that walk right behind you, like behind the couple. So it's like, you can't just set up and shoot. So we're like waiting, and all of a sudden, who do we see like 20 feet behind the bride and groom, but the 5 bridesmaids. And they're like, hey, we wanted to photobomb you. And it was just like, A, photobombs are, this is not a thing anymore. It's stupid. And B, you were supposed to stay on the bus. And C, it's not a photobomb. You're walking up right behind them. It's just ruining the picture and slowing things down. It was kind of like one of those shit or get off the pot moments. It's like, all right, either get in the picture or get on the bus, but like, you can't hang around in the background. And so the bride was like, oh, let me get a picture with the girls. So then we did it. Dave got a few shots of them, but it was just, it's one of those things where it's like, when you're behind on time and you're like trying to catch up and you're trying to do a good job and move things along efficiently, and then you just have these people, they're like human banana peels, like, just here we are. And so we got what we needed, but the bride was happy, the groom seemed happy. So I mean, if the bride's happy, it's one thing, but you always worry about, like, she's happy right now, but does she realize like what's potentially happening if you are getting set up for disaster? But we weren't. So we made it back to the venue, And I mean, the great thing about the Crystal Tea Room is it's just huge. There's all this space, so you're able to move around in there. So we got our lights set up, and the ceremony was on the stage. So we had lights set up, and the way it works is when the guests come in, this is like one of the top 20 worst jobs in the world. So there's a guy that has to stand at the end when the guests come in and tell them they have to like go all the way around. They can't go down the aisle and everyone was confused by this. 10% of the people just like didn't listen to him. People were late. I think you're always going to have late guests when it's a Friday wedding. Also, I think I mentioned this. I may have mentioned this before. Maybe I didn't. She told people that it was a 4:30 ceremony, but it was a 5 o'clock ceremony. She didn't want people to be late. But then the people that thought it was a 4:30 ceremony told people it was a 4 o'clock ceremony so that they wouldn't be late. So fortunately, the venue just doesn't let anybody up until it's time, which is great because in any other venue, they're just kind of milling about and making their way in. We were good. They still started late, felt like 10 or 15 minutes late. It was supposed to be a 10 to 15 minute ceremony. So the plan was I was going to like kind of hang it back. And then I went up a little bit on the sides, but like I just wanted to, as I mentioned earlier, I also just wanted to make sure I got like sort of like backup save shots of what Dave was getting just because it is a short amount of time. So back on my soapbox about like the family friend officiant. There needs to be a little bit more when these people get their online certificates. It can't just be like whatever questions you do or something. There actually needs to be a little bit of education on etiquette and common sense. So they come in and he never tells them to sit down. So the guests stand the entire ceremony. The bride held her bouquet for a long time, and she held it like straight down by her side until it was time for them to hold hands. And of course, he's tall, and our groom wasn't super tall. The officiant's tall, so he's like a head above the bride and groom. Well, guess who didn't move for the kiss? Guess whose head and ears are just sticking out above the bride and groom? Also, during the ceremony, in the Crystal Tea Room with 230 guests, I walk around to the one side and I hear someone talking. And I'm like, what is going on? There is a guy who looks like maybe he should have been working on the audio-visual cables in a back room. This long, frizzy hair, walking around by the guests on a Razor phone, which I don't think it even has speakerphone, but he's got the volume cranked up. So he's talking. This is during the ceremony, and guests are like looking over. I almost said something to him, and then I just wait and shot him an evil eye, dirty look later. It was so rude. Then there was a woman in the back where her phone rang so loudly twice. She was wearing like a satin Eagles jacket, so I probably should have just followed her around all night. The ceremony was very sweet. Other than that, other than the the standard hiccups, I try to get some like reflection shots from the back, but they get hard because you really want to line everything up, and you're trying to get the right angle with the mirror to like get the right things in there, but then like have a good seam. But then you're shooting with one hand, like so you're holding the camera with one hand and you're holding the mirror with the other. So I didn't take a lot, but like you take more than you think you need. But there was at least one in there that Dave saw that he liked. So that makes me happy that it wasn't, a total waste of time. Family pictures. She didn't want to do them over by like the gold beaded curtains. So we had to do them over in a corner by the bridal suite, which sort of worked out in our favor. So we set up the lights and it kept them contained in the room for the most part. So we told them what the deal was, and then we would have each smaller family, like immediate family grouping, come up, and then we were able to hold them there and then do like the big groupings. But they still slowed down because like one of the toms went missing, and then the one little girl ran off, and we're like 20 minutes into it, and the father of the bride, all cranky still, looks at me and he's like, he said something like, when are we finished with this? And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, what do you want me to say? Well, we have a hard stop at 6:50, or like right now. Like I just said, oh, whenever the pictures are finished. I'm like, and he's like, oh, he's like, this is like too many pictures or something. And it's like, we didn't come up with this list. We don't think that it's fun to run around and spend 50 minutes taking 8 million different family photos. It's something that the couple asked for, obviously. So it's just like, ugh, there's always one, and they just really make me crazy. He was cranky all night long. And then the grandmother had this big glass of white wine, so they took it from her and they put it on the windowsill, and they like were talking and like to get out there, and then all of a sudden she had it back. And then it was like, Grandma, you got to go out for the picture. So they took it away from her again, and then they were done with her, and they needed her to come back in the room, but she wasn't moving. So I picked up her wine glass, and I was like, Grandma, look. And it was like a little kitten. Like, she came right to me. It worked. So we got her back in the room. I feel like generally it went kind of smooth for what it was. But then the bride, of course, was like, while we were 80% finished, like, what time is it? And I was like, 6:06, and cocktail hour ended at 6:30. She was like, oh my, I'm missing most of cocktail hour. And I just don't understand how people don't understand that, like, two things are happening at the same time. Cocktail hour is 1 hour. You're also taking family portraits. If you have a really long list, it's going to take a really long time. Like, it's up to you. You get to pick how much of each thing you're going to do. But they never understand that. Introductions. Total shit show. They introduce the parents. Nobody comes in. Finally, they come in. They don't know. Nobody knows where to go. Now, all of a sudden, people don't want to walk down the middle where there's a stage and everyone's looking at them. Now they want to walk around everything. So they're just walking around. First dance, or whenever they announced, it wasn't the first dance. It was like when they announced them, and they, the bride and groom, and they were doing the little thing. The cold sparklers went off a couple times, and then they were like wrapping up. So like, I'm centered, I'm in position, I have my settings all dialed in. Dave comes over and he's like, we're ready for the cold sparklers, and we're both there. And nothing. And it was like, really, the one time you're all ready for the cold sparklers, and they just didn't do them again. So I think they had been having some problems with them earlier, but we definitely didn't see them as much as we normally do. Dances were fine. So the best man starts giving his speech. And of course, there's just cylinders with candles in them all over the place. So trios of big cylinder candles lining the ceremony aisle, and then clustered all around the sweetheart table. So the best man's speaking. All of a sudden, you can see like an orange glow the bride's dress. So I yelled, Tara, and I started running across the dance floor. Your dress is on fire. And her dress had like caught fire and was melting. And then the groom said, I thought I smelled something. So put that out. No one really reacted. People were so loud and hanging out at the bar during speeches. I really tried to get reaction shots. But of course, the dad is cranky and everything. So I tried to get like the mom. And then dances were fine. They were running a little late, as everybody always does with dinners. And all of a sudden, they were like moving the cake table. And they had just set down the couple's entrees. Like, I'd walked from the sweetheart table over, and they started moving the cake table. And they told us they were going to do the cake cutting. We were like, really? It's a little early. And they were like, yep. And then the videographer went and talked to them, and I guess he stalled them and got us some more time. We went over to eat, and then the guy comes up to me and says, hey, so just so you know, like, we are going to have to move forward with the cake cutting. We're going to do that at 9:35. And I look at my watch, and it's 9:34. So I was like, Dave, we get up and go over there, and they turn the table like again. They move the cake cutter, but the cake topper is not facing them. So I don't know what they were doing. We had all of our lights set up, and then of course we're waiting felt like 10 minutes. So they finally came over, and I think those shots are good. And then it was a matter of like, okay, we need to go out to get these Broad Street shots. She wanted the ones with the like, oh my gosh, like the long exposure with like the traffic lights, not traffic lights, car lights, headlights and taillights. And then also the champagne spray shots. So we were like, we are looking at the time. We're like, okay, well, the mummers should be here. Someone tells Dave, the mummers are stuck in traffic. So we're like, okay, well, maybe we'll go do this shot now. So we start gathering everything for that, got everything by the door, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, the mummers are here, they're coming out. Like, that's how much heads up they gave Dave. The mummers are here, they're coming out. I had taken my flashes off my camera because I was, planning on carrying a bunch of stuff down to Broad Street. So I like throw them back on and we do the whole mummers thing. Brian's a little bit drunk. Turns out she's not happy that the mummers came. She wasn't excited to see the mummers. So we do that whole thing, and then we're getting ready. Finally, we're going to go do the champagne shot, and then we're like, oh, we need champagne. So I run into the bridal suite, and I see one bottle of Veuve. I grab that, and then I look in the cooler, and there's other bottles of champagne, so I grab one of those. And then I come out, and the bride's like, oh, no, that's not it. It's a gold bottle. I was like, okay, sure. And she's like, let me show you. She's like, it's in a bag in a corner. And I was like, okay. So I go in, and every bridal suite has one thing in common, and it's just stupid bags everywhere. So it's like little tote bags and purses and other bags. And I mean, easily 9 bags in the room. And then she's like, oh, here it is. It's in a TJ Maxx bag behind a sofa underneath a bunch of stuff. So we grabbed that, and then I had the other one. I was like, did you already pay for the champagne? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, do you want to take this then as like a practice one? So we grabbed those two, and it felt like it was 15 minutes to get her out the door. She was supposed to go freshen up. She never left the sweetheart table. She told the groom to meet us outside the bathroom, and then she went in the opposite direction, so you had to like keep corralling her. We finally make our way down to Broad Street, and what was it? 9:35, I think it was. And I think Dave has awesome shots out there. So he brought all the gear that you needed. He had the softbox, he had the backlight. So he just had everything, and I think really got the shots. They seemed happy. Her dress was like totally melted, and as we were walking out, you could see like a few burnt strips hanging out the bottom. One of the guests stepped on it. So she kept walking, and the dress stayed behind. It just started like ripping. And then I was like, oh. And so he quick got off of the dress and kept going. Luckily, she got it off. She'd already told me she got it off the rack, and it was like the floor model. So I don't think she spent a fortune on it. It stayed clean for the ceremony. And I think I jinxed it because earlier I had said, well, your dress stayed so clean. And it caught on fire. Yeah, they seemed happy. She seemed very drunk at the end. I think, got everything. There were probably like a couple more groupings during reception time for Dave to grab. But the son, Shane, the 11-year-old, he was really great. I mean, didn't complain at all. He was great for pictures. He was really sweet with his dad. He was just really great. So I'm excited to go through the pictures and see what we have. Hopefully the ceremony shots are good. Hopefully there's some reflection shots that turned out so it wasn't a waste of time. And that's it.
I forgot how much fun and how funny this wedding actually was. I went through the pictures. I took 1,790 pictures over 10 hours, which was $179 an hour, which does sound like it's a little bit on the lower side, but I'm also kind of aware of how much I'm shooting because Dave doesn't want things to be overshot. So the detail photos, I set up the flat lay and I took like 5 pictures of that. And then the video guy was getting his shots. I think that they're fine. I just don't love flat lays. So I prefer the actual individual detail shots and like the macro shots of the ring and like the ring in between like the bejeweled sections of her shoes. I like those better, but I hope I have enough flat lay options for Dave. That time just flies by. Like I went back, I had it all set up and started shooting it at 11:59. So it was all set up and ready to go before we were even, I think, officially shooting. But then the last detail shot I took was at 12:11. So that was still like 11 minutes of detail photos. Again, the guys' prep room was awesome with light. I couldn't figure out what was just off a little bit. And I realized all the guys were standing and kind of clustered around like the bathroom door. And it was because it wasn't like a suite with like a sofa or any chairs. There was just one desk chair. So nobody was sitting. They were all standing. But I like the pictures. I love the pictures of the groom and his son. They were great. The boy was adorable. Him opening the gift from his wife or wife to be were really sweet. He teared up. I like those. I got some detail shots of the gifts, the son jumping around on the bed. There is one that I really like. I shot real low up of the dad putting his son's tie on, and I was able to get like both eyeballs in there and like get his face just framed in there. So I did like that one. And then first look, we were only running about 15 minutes behind, I want to say 15, 20 minutes behind. For those, I think Dave has really good photos. I think mine are good. When we got their first look, those were good. And then when we turned on to the other side, I tried to underexpose mine so that you could get a little bit of the building in the background, and I wasn't putting any flash on them. So they're underexposed. I don't know if I should have gone like total silhouette for them. I definitely darkened it towards the end there to get the buildings in the background, but not all of their silhouettes are as sharp as I would have liked. But I was just trying to get something different than what Dave was getting. The photos on the stairs, I like, but because it was all that overhead light and I wasn't using flash, they do have like dark eyes. So they're not great. I forgot about the limo. I was cracking up because it had like every possible goofy, bright add-on you could possibly get in there. The back looked like it was like neon ant farm situation. I don't know what it was. I've never seen anything like it, but it was goofy looking. Merchants Exchange pictures were good. Like I said, we had great weather, and I think those are good. Dave, I think, was laughing at me because he's told me before he only was 4 vertical and 4 horizontal, and that's it. So I've really been trying to stick to that because I find that previously to that, I was just overshooting that moment and just getting like a lot of groom and groomsmen portraits. So I'm really trying to keep that to a reasonable number. Got some candid of them walking across the street when we were going for Broad Street. Those are always just more like behind the scenes, more candid ones, since I'm not setting up for like all the proper lighting that Dave's doing. So I'm sort of like holding stuff and just kind of snapping when I can. I really wish people would do less symmetrical things for their ceremony, because when you have something that's symmetrical, everything needs to be symmetrical or else it's just disturbing. Like they had this huge, really beautiful hoop, like a big circle, 8 feet high, 8 feet around, with flowers, fresh flowers. It was beautiful, but you have to be positioned like perfectly in front of that or else you're off center. And I just find that people, it's just distracting then to me. Maybe a normal person's fine. But I'd already mentioned like the officiant didn't step out of the way, so he's in the back of the pictures. I did hide behind the curtain to get like the introduction pictures of the wedding party coming down the aisle. I think those are okay. And I'm looking at it now. I tried to wait to get them closer so that I was able to naturally crop out the exit sign. Dave, that was a favor for you. I was really proud I thought of that. And then, like I said, there was like one mirror reflection shot of the chandelier, which I think will work. So those were just a really warm light for the ceremony. I did have flash, but it is a lot of the ambient light. We talked about family formals. I only took like 2 candids during that because it was so dark and I was doing more of the wrangling. The grip and grins for cocktail hour turned out well. I tried to get like the big love sign in lights that they have. And then I did like a big overall room shot that's not that exciting, but it's not often that you can kind of get the whole cocktail hour in one frame. I do like on the dance floor, they have like lights coming down. And so the floor, I don't know the right thing to say, it kind of looks like water. And it just provides like some nice light, some additional light, and focuses the attention in one spot, which I like rather than just a big empty dance floor. Introduction photos weren't bad. I went with a wider lens because you just never know where people are going to end up. I talked about the cold sparklers just going off a few times. And it was like the one time we were super ready and in place, and they just didn't have them at the end of that dance. I did towards the end of the dance, I think, kill my flash and just used ambient because they were under that chandelier and I was able to use that light. So I liked some of those just with her dress. Those are like blue and gold. I think they look, hopefully Dave likes them. Overall, I feel like we were kind of fortunate with light for the day, from prep to their portraits to that space. I like that space. And you can put your lights wherever you need them for flash. All in all, I thought it was a great wedding. They were like easygoing enough. They didn't get like upset or hung up on things. The groom was really nice. I really, really liked him. She was nice as well, but he was just like so easygoing and sweet. And I think it was his mom. She was really sweet too. I took way too many photos of the love ice sculpture because it was starting to melt, and I was trying to get like a picture of the water as it was dripping down. And then I had to stop because I was like, Dave's going to kill me when he sees like 2 dozen. There were only 8, but it felt like a lot. And cake cutting pictures, I feel like I'm getting a little bit better at those. Normally, I just feel like they're horrible, but those I think are evenly lit, balanced with ambient, so you can see the parents in the background. And then a little bit of party dancing, our mummers. So for the mummers, I was down there with everybody, and then I went up on stage. I got the permission of the band. They were very reluctant, but I was like, I will stand still and not move. So I spent maybe the last half of their performance up on the stage and like shooting over the mummers and between the mummers, some with flash, some without flash. I did some with like the mirror to get the reflection, just trying to get like all that color in there. So I'm just hoping that there was like a different option for Dave to use in the gallery there, because they had all those umbrellas going on. And then we had my Broad Street shots are just like candids, a couple of them, because Dave was lighting it and he has the really beautiful images. But again, it was an enjoyable day. We laughed a lot. It wasn't super stressful. I would say we had that 20 minutes where we were behind because of hair and makeup, getting her down, or up rather, for first look. And then we were all caught up. We were only about 5 minutes behind when we got in the trolley to head off to Merchants Exchange. And then we went back to get the parents. And that put us like 25, 30 minutes behind schedule. We were able to make up that time. Dave's really good about being efficient with his shots. So when hair and makeup puts us behind, or just the bridal parties taking a little bit longer with things, he's able to still get the shots on the shot list, but be pretty efficient with his time and get things back on schedule. So that's hugely beneficial because it keeps everyone in good spirits and not freaking out. So again, I really like the images. I think Dave has great images. I hope he's happy with what I have. I look forward to shooting at the Crystal Tea Room again. I always look forward to shooting with Dave. And that's it. So thanks so much for listening. If you haven't yet, please subscribe on whichever platform you listen to your podcasts. I'd love it if you gave us a rating, and it'd be awesome if you gave an honest review as well. Thanks again for listening, and have a great day.
Thanks for listening to A Second Helping. Please like and subscribe.